We knew like a few months ahead that this upcoming silly season would be full crazy.
What we can get out of it is very simple. We're trying to make the best possible teams at all times.
Few things that was rumored could have really, changed all teams.
I guess everything kind of started with Nico 6 months ago when he was kind of confirmed joining Falcons, right? And then that kind of started the whole silly season with other teams then wanting to make upgrades or changes.
You have to take your responsibility and look at what upgrades you can make. In the beginning, we had a completely different thing in mind. Then other players becomes available. Some other players we thought we could get were not available. This was going back and forth plenty of times. Something that is very, very obvious from the inside, might not be obvious from the outside, is that the interest has definitely increased.
We had some really good talks with players that we signed, with players that we didn't sign. Even if you're from a fan point of view, look at the ranking, you're like, oh, what is this about? In the industry and with the people working within it, players and staff and coaches and so on, they know the difference, right? They know how teams are being handled, the culture, the workflows, the setup they have around, and that made a huge difference in the talks we had.
Agree.
So many roster moves all over the place. And there's a lot of those trades that can only happen if this happens and if this happens. And sometimes you end up with, either you make like 1 or 0 moves or you make 3 or 4 moves to make it able to even work. You have to make some very, very tough calls. Kudos to Exist. I pressure him on everything. I second guess everything he says. Even though I believe sometimes what he says, I really want him to think everything through.
Benching Res was probably the hardest one in my career so far. I mean, I was part of scouting him in 2017, I think, from Epsilon, when I was still a player. He was the MVP of Oakland, and he won us that event. So he's an OG member of NIP. He's a legend of NIP, as much as someone like Forrest or Getright is in my eyes. I'll always value him, both as a player and as a friend, I would say. In the end, basically rebuilding the entire team, only keeping Wrinkle just made sense.
I think we do one of the best transfer windows that I've seen or heard about in an IP. We managed to get, U-Jerks, Aristose, Shush, Snappy, one of them for free, rest of them for symbolic sums. That is also a crazy part of this transfer window, which allows us to still be extremely ready for whatever comes our way in 25. That part is going to be key and should not be underestimated how important that is. And honestly, how proud we are that we managed to pull that off.
We can probably start with the 2 Portuguese guys, U-Jerks and Aristose. I remember practicing against them even with Heroic back in the days. We couldn't beat them in a practice. And something that really stood out with Aristose is that he's very skilled mechanically, positive rated on the T sides, which is kind of rare with players these days.
He was playing a lot of the very toughest role you could on CT, which kind of explains everything, but we're trying to maybe transition him a little bit more into a star player. He seems like a kid that has the potential to do so, and I really believe in him.
U-Jerks, he's the more aggressive rifler.
Unorthodox in the sense that he's very silent and shy, I would even say, which kind of contradicts with the numbers he's having in game.
A bit of a shy, quiet guy. But when you get to know him, he's a big ass troll.
Both him and Aristose is very smart when it comes to teamwork and like small gimmicks, basically. They really wanted to play with an experienced IGL, and I had been talking with Snappy for a couple of weeks maybe then.
I think NIP was very attractive when I started talking to Björn and Richard. The people that are behind you in the CS team seems super stable and warm, and I think it reminded me a lot about ENS, which I see as a good thing.
Picking up Snappy, people could ask some questions. He had quite a weak form in Falcons. However, that entire project, if you look at all the players, has definitely underperformed to what level they could have in other teams.
It was a rough year personally and also on a professional level. My goal for 2025 is mainly to just be happy, just to kind of hit the reset button. Having a full fresh start with new people around you is kind of maybe the best way to go about it. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, good job, boys.
He wants to win. I mean, he'll do whatever it takes to win. That's why he's been so successful in especially working with younger kids as well, kind of like what he did in Ends twice. He took some less experienced players and made them into title contenders.
The way I see developing young players is that you can give them the last 5, 10, 20%, but at the end of the day, a lot of the work comes with choosing the right players, because if you pick a player that doesn't have the mentality or the desire to want it, or the talent, then it's not going to happen.
For the final position, we talked to a lot of different players. When Falcons decided to buy Heroic, suddenly Shush was available on the market, and I mean, having coached him for 2 years, I know what he's capable of. I know he's a very skilled player, and he's highly regarded on the scene, and I mean, he's a great teammate as well. So getting him in was, for me, a no-brainer, and it's something that we couldn't pass on.
Exist was very, very adamant that he wanted to work with him again. So that was the quickest decision ever. He's been an excellent anchor, one of the best anchors in the world for a very long time. A complete no-brainer.
I like the roster, especially for the style I want to build.
Snappy is a great leader. I think he also likes playing with some younger guys. If he tells them to rush, they will follow him, they will rush, you know.
We have 4 riflers and an AWPer that are all willing to kind of be aggressive, and I prefer having more aggressive than passive players because I think it opens up to more play styles. I think it's easier to teach someone aggressive to stay passive than to teach someone passive to go aggressive.
We have a very solid team that's looking very good. However, with the Valve ranking changes, it's gonna be a bit rough at the start.
We're in the middle of a crazy Wild West era of CS. It would have really helped to be on top in January 25 to avoid this. We're not, and that's tough luck. But what we do have is the right people to get through this.
That is going to be a process that it can go, like, I would say, semi-quick if we get one like really great result at one point. But it's also a process that can take 6 to 12 months to get high enough, and I think this is kind of that's going to be the toughest challenge, to kind of accept that even though we might be a really good team, we can't play the best teams yet.
24 was a year of rebuild. It was a tough one, but 2025 has to be a year of progress. Has to be a year where you can follow the journey, believe in it, and actually seeing some proper results.